Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. I am Bart, and on this episode, we're recapping a frustrating and quite honestly sad Camp Cupcake for the US men's national team. It was a 1-0 loss to Slovenia. It was a cold day in San Antonio. Really, about the only positive was we had a full house down there to watch the game. To talk about this with me is someone who has an article coming out soon. He's been writing a lot, and he's got more to come. It's my friend Thomas, aka US Keeper Thomas. I know you have plenty of words to say about this past camp.
Yeah, I think it's always good to put in perspective what this camp is or has been, and while disappointing, I think we have to kind of realize it is what it is as a camp. But I think fans want to feel good. I think fans want to see progression in the program, and I just think this camp continues missing certain objectives that need to kind of happen to not waste opportunities.
Not waste opportunities. That's what my big takeaway from this camp was, is it just felt like a wasted opportunity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in depth. But before we get going, I want to remind everyone to please follow the show on Twitter at SoccerForUsPod, and make sure you subscribe to Soccer Down Here on whatever podcatcher you are listening. I just want to start off by saying that for me, and I think we've said this a lot, results aren't as important as performance. Results ultimately do matter, but in friendlies, you want to look at how the team plays, how individuals play, and make your judgments from that. So I'm not necessarily mad that we lost to Slovenia in a January non-FIFA window camp. What I'm concerned about, though, is that we looked uninspired, kind of bad, and wasted an opportunity to give players who could be important, if not this year, but also in the future. We didn't give them valuable minutes. And instead gave those minutes to players who will not or should not impact the team at all in the future. And to me, to echo what you said about the wasted opportunities, that's to me the problem. It's not that we lost 1-0 to Slovenia. I don't care entirely. I do care that we didn't create really any chances that were clear-cut scoring opportunities until the second half. Actually, until the second, after 60 minutes into the game. Because ultimately, if this camp is about getting new guys, getting them acclimated to the style of play that Gregg wants, the patterns of play that the team wants, you're going to have hiccups. I get that. And it's not like Slovenia looked good. Their one scoring opportunity was a breakaway from, dispossessing a young kid at midfield and quickly launching a counterattack. Yes, that was a problem, but it's not like they made us look bad, But this was a game that I can stomach if it's a whole bunch of new kids, young kids, trying to see what they offered the program going forward. And you looked at the starting lineup, and that was not the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to see some of these younger kids in there, and because again, when again, as you said, the last 25 minutes was pretty entertaining. There was a lot of attack on the field, and that's after a lot of those subs were made in there to get some of those players in there, and I think that's where you miss out on this situation. It's like, look, we have an Olympics coming up. I know you want to play some of these players, and I guess I'm okay with certain. If maybe fine, your defense is a bunch of veterans, so you can kind of work through and have that build up from the back and do your thing. But you have to really give these players an opportunity to kind of show what they can against a team that is kind of in a similar situation. Players are trying to win spots for the Euros, and so these players want to show, they want to give an opportunity. I mean, this January camp wasn't as long as others in the past. I think they've condensed this camp down. It was 8 days, I believe, or in the past it had been like 3 weeks, leading up to a friendly or two. So in that condensed time, I think you want to provide yourself a little bit more opportunity to see these players. They did have a friendly. Was it against River Plats, I believe?
Yeah.
And so I think that was a closed door friendly, and I think that's good. I was happy to hear they did that. I think it gave players another opportunity to show match play, but this is where like fans start to lose it because we saw nothing different from Gregg. This is a typical
Yeah.
possession based. They wore the same down over the field. They had possession. They had a ton of passes, but with what? There was very little, creativity. Like use that roster to figure out what some of these players can do. Like I don't know. It's just frustrating. We just haven't seen that next piece of it. It's a rerun of the last 4
Yeah.
years, and it's you know it's concerning. Even though it's a January MLS camp, it's concerning to me because it tells me that he hasn't learned from his time away. He hasn't taken that, and because you have to adapt, and to the moment, to the roster, right? And that's going to be the difference if you can adapt to those situations because you're not always going to have your preferred 11 out there.
Yes, that's exactly true. And speaking of preferred 11, we can honestly say that this was not it. Let's look at that starting lineup. You had Patrick Schulte in goal, right back Shaq Moore, center backs were Sean Zawadzki and Miles Robinson, and on the left you had DeJuan Jones. In the midfield, you had two at the base, Josh Atencio and Aiden Morris. At the spear of the midfield, you had Tim Tillman. On the right wing, you had Kamungo, left wing Luna, and up top Brian White. I thought Bernard Kamungo and Diego Luna were fine. I'm a little sad that I didn't see more of them, more impact from them. Luna was not great on the left. He was better when he moved inside. But outside of that, especially, the starting 11 was disappointing. And even Tim Tillman, who, quote, won man of the match from US Soccer, was meh at best. Am I wrong for being too negative?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think you got to give a little leeway. These guys haven't played together. I think there's a huge continuity piece to that. That's a challenge, and I think that's where I don't know how you remedy it, but you almost
Yeah.
need to have like multiple camps with like your A squad, B squad. Like you almost need to figure out a way to do that. In with national team players. Again, like a Tillman, like it's his first time. I don't think he was put in a position to succeed, but I was glad to see him up there. I thought Aiden Morris, was probably as consistent as you expect him to be out there. But it's a tough.
The kid's
It's tough.
consistent. He's not dynamic enough for me. I'm
Oh,
sorry. I'm over Aiden Morris, and
Yeah.
I know that's going to piss off a lot of people. I don't care. He has gotten every chance to be a star within the second choice teams, if you will. He had his chances at the Gold Cup and he failed, to be quite
Yeah.
honest. And in this
Yeah.
match, he was fine. I don't know what I'm wanting from him, maybe, is my problem, but it's like he gets so much hype because he plays MLS Cup well. And then when it comes time for him to actually do something outside of MLS Cup, I watch him and I'm like, okay, what did I just watch?
Yeah. He doesn't wow you in that sort of, he doesn't really do it, that sort of thing. I would say he's kind of in the line of like a Jackson Ewell or a I'm blanking. I don't know because literally
That's
they're
the
the same.
best. Will Trapp, maybe,
Yeah.
but I
Will
don't even know
Trapp.
if he's
That's
that.
Will
Yeah,
Trapp.
yeah.
Like
I think he's better than them.
yeah,
but I
would
don't think
agree.
either
He's
of those
better.
guys were good.
Right. I think he's better than them, but I don't think he doesn't really do much for me. And so again, but he's consistently just boring. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
try anything, and I think that's but that again, maybe that's a product of just not getting certain groups of players together in those moments, right? And I think that's sometimes the challenge of the international game, and how they're going to navigate that, right? And again, it's an excuse for sure, but it's definitely it is something that I've always questioned. I don't like these short camps. I don't like the short windows there is an expansion of windows coming up, uh,
Yes.
but and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. That's going to be after the 2026 World Cup, but I believe, unless it's changed. I was looking at it today and I didn't look that closely, but having more time with the with your squads, I think is beneficial for everyone,
Yeah.
coaches, players.
Well, you mentioned that this was a shorter camp. Not most camp cupcakes. The January camp does tend to be at least 2 weeks, and this one was not, and that's fair to say. Um, that said, there were some players, and I want to talk about one in particular who has been a part of the USA A squad. The man went to the World Cup, and that's the type of player that I do expect to boss a game like this. And I don't think Shaq Moore did that. And that, to me, especially when he was called out in the press conference with Gregg Berhalter saying that he could be a backup for Serginho Dest come Nations League in March, that man did not show me anything that could point to me that I would be comfortable with him starting a Copa America match or a Nations League match, even against Jamaica.
Yeah, that's on Greg though. Greg's got that's a
He's
hit on
got to
Greg.
move on, Greg. How
Well,
many more times?
but you can't. He can't make that statement and then Moore go out there and throw a stinker and be like, Greg, what are you watching that everyone else is not watching? That's different on that. Like, what's going on
I'm
here that you're
sure this
missing
is
that?
this is what it is, and I'm jumping the gun on this point. And I'm sorry. I'm sure Shaq Moore does practice drills super well. That's what Greg values. I'm sorry. I'm tired of this. He values training, and I get that, but he values that you do the training exercise well, not that you are talented. I'm sorry. I hate to be that guy right now, but like that's what I get with Shaq Moore is he doesn't do squat on the field for me. But he keeps getting opportunities, and it's clearly because Greg brings him in, and he's probably works hard. He listens. He's coachable. And he don't do crap on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's again we did similar to Aiden Morris. I mean, look, Aiden Morris is a little younger. Maybe he figures it out, but like Moore, he's had
At
his
least Aiden
chances.
Morris is Olympic eligible. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Well, that's the thing.
Like that I can stomach.
Right. Like I've seen enough of Moore. Like this, like look, I wanted to see him come up. When he did, he had shown signs. He did okay in
Absolutely.
that one Gold Cup. I thought he did all right, but he hasn't continued to perform, and that's the thing. You've got to be able to. There are players who can do great with their clubs, come into the national team and be stinkers, and there are other players who kind of do the opposite, and there are other players who just do it well everywhere. But it's that's where that evaluation is missed on this. Like, and so bringing him in, fine. You want to bring a couple guys in, a player at the World Cup. Okay, I have no problem with that. I think that's fine. It's kind of a cool thing to see what his experiences were, but we can't see any more of them. I mean, Greg just holds on to these guys a little too long or way too
Mm-hmm.
long, and it just drives me nuts.
What I think bothered me specifically about this lineup is I was sure Shaq Moore would start, even though I don't want to see it. But to me, DeJuan Jones is a better backup than Shaq Moore right now because he can play both sides of the field. He didn't have a great couple of crosses when he got on the left side when he got up the flank, but that's neither here nor there for this particular point. But you have two young, promising left backs in this group with John Tolkien and Caleb Whiteley, two guys who I think most people would rate above both Moore and maybe above Jones in terms of potential, right? You very easily, and I like that he started DeJuan Jones. So this is where I'm going with this. You could have just put Jones on the right and started Tolkien or Wiley at left back because they have more to actually gain from this than Shaq Moore.
Yeah, I fully agree. That's what I had hoped we would see is that because again you put Shaq on the right and he's played the right for US a couple times I think.
Yeah.
And because you have an issue come Nations League where you need to have a backup right back.
You have to understand that behind Dest, yes, you have Joe Scally, but you have to have a right back behind that because
your two other left backs that don't have that versatility.
Yeah.
I mean, you have other options, of course, but I actually think Jones is a logical, realistic option. Like again, he's one of these players I say all the time. He's a bridge player. This is it for him. This is his cycle chance to make a name for himself and go to a World Cup. After that, he's done. Like he's chosen not to go to Europe, which is fine. He's going to stay with the Revs, and that, I think that's suits
Which
him.
is fine. I don't mean this as a disparaging point against him. I don't think he's a European quality player necessarily. But Shaq Moore wasn't necessarily European quality. He was playing in the second divisions of a lot of leagues. So, like, sure, DeJuan Jones could go do that, but you could also just stay in MLS and play at a higher level and get paid more.
Right. And I think that, I think that's what we saw with, with certain players, and their comfortabilities. And I don't have a problem with that. I think this is his opportunity, his window. I think his versatility is nice. And I think that, he's a player that, can kind of fit that, you know, that depth.
Yeah, so that's one particular one that I was upset at is you didn't start either Tolkien or Wiley because one, I think Tolkien's earned it. Like that's the other thing is Tolkien played fairly well in the Gold Cup, well enough for me to say, yeah, let's put him out there. The other one that I still like, we're recording on a Monday. The game was on a Saturday, and I just can't wrap my head around it. Is why Brian White was starting. He was ineffective at best. He had one good little pass that set up a shot in the first half. But like, I didn't need to see 60 minutes of Brian White. Not only did he start, he played 60 whole minutes. And this is the guy who's 27 years old, been an MLS lifer. And there's nothing, I'm not saying that as a disparaging comment. I'm just saying at 27, someone who is still in MLS, he is at his peak. This is what we're going to get from Brian White, as opposed to an Olympic age eligible player in Duncan McGuire coming off of an equitable season as Brian White. Statistics wise, yes, Brian was the highest scoring MLS American, but Duncan McGuire is right behind him and played fewer games, fewer minutes. So what is Brian a better camp player? Like that's again what I'm saying is like, sure, he may have outperformed Duncan McGuire in camp. I would expect a 27-year-old almost a 10-year professional to be a better practice player than a 23-year or 22-year-old. You know what I'm saying? So that when you just base it on, oh, well, you did this training exercise well. I don't get it because Brian doesn't do anything special. Duncan McGuire has a chance to be our starting striker at the Olympics, which, by the way, we don't really have one unless we want to bring in, I don't know, Ricardo Pepi. I doubt he's going to be our Olympic striker, So why whiff on the opportunity to have Duncan McGuire get 60 plus minutes as your striker in a U.S. men's national team shirt?
Yeah, there's I don't know. I have no idea what Gregg was thinking on that. Again, that's just that situation where like the only thing I don't know is that maybe Gregg knows something that they're not sharing with us. Like, hey, we're not going to have a lot of players to release, be released to the Olympics. Maybe Brian, I mean, but that's the only thing I can give him on that. But even then, you still want to see these younger players. This is going to be a camp for them. Again, this is a make or break. You get into your your early 22, 23, 24. Like this is it for these guys, and they've got to get an opportunity. 27, 28. This is your first call in. I'm sorry, like unless you pull something that's rare off, like it's not even have no chance to make this national team and do anything. I mean the depth is there where that's not going to likely happen.
And that's my issue is this is that striker where I know we don't have like a world-class striker necessarily, but we have a solid top 3 strikers. And then we have 2 or 3 guys after that that are pretty solidly in the depth chart. And Brian White is nowhere close to that, in my opinion. And that's just where I don't understand why you're giving this to him over a guy like McGuire, who, quite honestly, to me, looked better. Again, came onto the field, magically we look better. That's just what I keep going back to. And I know that there are a lot of combinations of why these things do this and whatever, but like, if the thought is, oh, well, White is a more experienced striker and does X, Y, and Z, so we're going to put him in there to help the inexperienced players. He's just as inexperienced. Just because he's older and played in MLS doesn't mean he has any experience at the international level. So that to me is a moot point. To me, Duncan does just as good as he does. And again, is Olympic eligible. So why is that not your default?
Yeah, I mean, it's typical Greg. I mean, he has you scratching your head on a lot of these moves, and I mean, it's kind of has a feel to when he first became manager, right? Like, why are you bringing Nick Lima in? Like, in general, like you're like, what's
Yeah.
going on? Like, and and most of those players, we were proven right. They just flamed out. They just didn't, do well. And but
Yeah.
Greg gets this. He gets obsessed with players for some reason. A lot of we see it more on the domestic side, in the MLS, and he, I don't know, he can't let it go. It's
Caleb and I have talked about this for a while, that it seems like he gets obsessed with a certain quality that a player brings, like a one thing that they do well. He did this with frickin' Jossie Zardes for forever. And it's like, yeah, but he's not good at anything else. Paul Arriola is another great example. He works hard, he presses high up the field. That's great. What else does he do for you? Because if you're telling me that all of a sudden that Tim Weah doesn't work hard and defend high up the field, that's bullshit. You know, Tim Weah does that, but he also does the whole everything else about soccer well. Yet he thought Paul Arriola was a better option to play better soccer than Tim Weah. And that's just where I can't get behind Greg still, looking at players and going, well, I think they make our team better. And it's like, yeah, but they're not better than this player. And it's not a marginal thing in a lot of cases. But
yeah,
anyway,
and where that has me worried is look, the core we have the core we talk about, the core 15 to 18 players. Where it has me worried is where he's filling in the back end of that roster for the
right.
Copa America or the World Cup. Who's he seeing is like, well, that player, right? Are you going to have a player that's versatile and that can play multiple positions? Are you going to are you going to bring 4 right backs? Like, that's, to me, that's where I get concerned, because I think everyone's healthy. 18 players fill themselves out pretty well. It's the rest
Yeah.
of it. And how are you going to fill that roster out to give you the best depth opportunity and put the players in the right spots? And in my opinion, bring in Haji Wright to the World Cup over Pepe. It's like, okay, I mean, we can do that all day long,
Or
but
bringing Ferreira to the World Cup over Pepe.
right, exactly. I mean, any of those
You
sorts
know,
of things, and again for the 4 right backs, like it's
bringing Shaq Moore and DeAndre Edlin to the World Cup for who knows why. Yeah, I'm with you. We do want to obviously mention the subs that came in. So in the 61st minute, we had 4 subs come in. Technically, McGuire came on in the 62nd, but this was all in one substitution block. John Tolkien, Jack McGlynn, Esmir Bayaktarovic, and Duncan McGuire came in. Now, Esmir was amazing to watch. He was a spark plug off the bench. I'm not going to make big prognostications after one match, but what I said on, when I went on to Soccer Down Here is he looked like the only guy truly playing, going, this is an opportunity for me to make the team. And that to me was why I liked his performances. He said, this is my opportunity to show Greg what I have to offer. And I thought he did really well. Again, there's not a whole lot that you can that you can say from a positive standpoint. Okay, this can equal this, but this is good to see bright, inspired, and attacking performances.
yeah, lots of great energy coming off the bench. I mean, just stood out, right, in 30 minutes. I mean, that's it.
Yeah,
Like, the right mindset for that, right? I've got 30 minutes, right? I'm going to give you everything I've got in 30 minutes
right.
to show you what I have. And he's 18 years old, just falls into that, next tier of people, right? So that's the thing. Like, we see this. And so if you went back to the '02 World Cup, you have situations where you get to a certain point in the cycle where that level of 18, 19, 20-year-old player that is not in the team currently has an opportunity. Beasley and Donovan were that in '02.
Yeah.
And so after the Copa America, that's where these players are going to have a chance. And again, that's why this
Yes.
camp is so important, because you have to kind of show that a little bit. And again, putting
Right.
Luna on the wing was a waste, in my opinion. And so, like, those are the things there that, like, your coach isn't helping you out to put you in
Yep.
the best position to succeed. You know what I mean? So that's frustrating, because Luna kept coming back. in the
Yeah.
match. Almost like
It made no sense to me, speaking of setup, why we had Atencio and Morris as like the two hardworking double pivot midfielders. Um, and Tillman as a single like attacking midfielder with Luna on the left when you could have like you didn't need to put Atencio and Morris on the field. Now, to be fair, maybe this is where Gregg is doing his galaxy brain thing and he's thinking, okay, I need to work on a double pivot so that I can see how this works. But you're not using any player who's remotely close to the first or second choice at their position. So why are we trying it out?
Yeah, let them play. Like let them
Yeah.
play. Let them have a little bit more freedom out there to get creative. And again, in the last 30 minutes, they were able to do that.
So much better.
Yeah. It was wild. I mean, it was a flip switch. It went from just like a completely boring match to really just, a great, attacking opportunity for these players. It was definitely kind of a pleasant surprise because I've watched a lot of these January camps and there's not a lot of stretches where you see that sort of attack and an opportunity.
Some quick stats before we truly move on. 15 total shots in the game from the US. Four of those on target. 11 of those shots came in the second half, and most of those 11 came after the 60th minute. Same with passing. We had 695 total passes. That's great. Gregg Berhalter probably loved that number. 355 of those came in the second half. And again, most of those coming as we got past the 60th minute. But also more telling is the amount of long balls that we not just hit, but connected on. 27 accurate long balls and 6 accurate crosses in the second half, compared to the first half where we only had 2 accurate crosses and 16 accurate long balls. So part of that is just a mental shift. And Gregg Berhalter did mention this at halftime. They needed to be a little bit more direct and get behind them. But the long balls, not just hitting them, but also connecting on them, to me is a sign of a guy like, especially Jack McGlynn coming in. I mean, you saw it almost immediately, his nice little left foot through ball. Those types of things it's frustrating, right? Because as we said, why are we starting these older players who aren't good when clearly the younger guys came on and were able to perform and play the system better?
Yeah, I don't have any comment on because I don't know, but that's the thing. That's part of too, like how you build your youth system, right? Like, and so that's where I think U.S. soccer is just missing it right now. Like, do you build your youth system around what the national team is trying to do, or do you build it around the players that you have to be able to run it? It's maybe a little bit combination of them both, but because when Tab Ramos was running it, he had a system in place that was not the same as what the national team was running.
Right.
And he got criticized for that, but he was successful. The players knew where to be, knew what they were doing, knew their roles, understand what it was, and it was a progression from U17 through U20, right? And that was it was a clear, concise, uh, strategy. And now, we don't really have any of that going on. It's just kind of it's just I don't know. It's not good, and so I think that's where some of that's missing too from these
Yeah.
players.
Yep. My last thoughts, and I'll let you get yours in. My concern just continues to be with Gregg that for someone, a coach who is so bent on creating this system, this overarching system and philosophy and underlying tactics, they don't translate ever. They don't work. They don't create good attacking moments consistently enough. And to your point of trying to build throughout the program, I love the idea of having a consistent and a unified philosophy and tactical framework, right? But it just is really concerning that since he's come back outside of one game, we've looked like we actually could score a lot of goals. And that's the whole point of his system, is to try to get us to score goals. And that continues to be the concern with Gregg, is that his system just doesn't produce goals. It doesn't produce goal scoring opportunities well enough, let alone produce goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to add on to that, to me, I don't care what the style of play is for them. I don't care. I want to see. I don't care how they win. I just want them to win at this point. And so, it's to, and let the players play. And so that's, I think that's where Greg is very rigid in those sorts of things. I mean, yes, he's evolved. He's not going to do that. From when he started and realize he can't do certain things, but we haven't seen that Greg 2.0. He hasn't evolved. You know what I mean? Like he came in and look, he had his hand in that 2023 Gold Cup. Okay, roster style play, like it changed very differently from what we saw, weeks before in the Nations League. You know what I mean? Same coach. So to tell me that, Greg, he doesn't get, the wins and losses from that Gold Cup, but he definitely had his hands involved in there, and which is concerning because I don't see any change in Greg. I said it earlier. I'll say
Yeah.
it again. I don't see anything that tells me Greg has changed his ways. You know what I mean? If I anything, I think the U.S. soccer, Greg and everyone around is hardened themselves. They are an angry group of people right now. In general, I don't know if they see the money for the World Cup coming one way or the other, but they're not. It doesn't seem like they're a real loose organization right now, Bruce Federation, right, in general. So to me, there's something there, and I don't know. I would be shocked if U.S. Soccer didn't have a plan B or C ready in the event that we see a performance, even at the Nations League, that's not what the federation thinks it should be, and heading into um, Copa America, because for as much as they want to stick with Greg, they do not. There's a lot of money riding on US having, a deep run. And so, it's expanded World Cup, a lot more games, and a lot more opportunity to get your eyes on soccer in this country. So I don't think they want to miss out on that. So Greg is, I don't know. There's some people that think no, but I think we're just seeing a lot more smoke from a lot of other folks who wouldn't even utter, Greg possibly being replaced. So we'll see in March to see what he's going to
Yeah.
do. I mean, look, it shouldn't be horribly difficult to do what they need to do in March, but right now I don't have a great feeling about it. It's just, again, I know it's one camp, I know it's a January camp, but it just didn't sit well with me.
Well, look, we've lost 2 games in a row. We've lost 3 of the 7 since Greg came back. Last year, literally last year at this time, we also lost our January camp match. Um, and at that point in time, we had also lost 2 in a row because we lost our final match of the World Cup to the Netherlands. Slightly different scenario here, though. Um, and I think that's just really kind of, again, the point to like Greg. I don't, I'm not sure he's truly understanding how to maximize the January camp in the way that it should be. And we talked about this on the last episode of if you're using this as a way to bring in new guys who are over the age of 25, 20, even 23, but like that's not going to be a good use of this camp. You know, um, this camp can't be the way you find it can't be a reliable way that you find guys who are going to help you immediately. Right. And I think that's what he was trying to do with like a Shaq Moore and a Brian White. They're not going to like that can't be what this camp is for. Um, and it certainly can't be what the camp is for when you have youth World Cups or youth tournaments coming up in that same year. It's a wasted opportunity to bring in young guys, young talent, and really get them in to see what the first team does and looks like. But again, 3 losses in his 7 matches back is not good. It's just not. It's unacceptable, to be quite honest, that you're not looking like a team that has evolved at all.
Yeah, it's it's really, they just, it's not well defined. I don't know who needs to define it. I just don't think Greg's smart enough. It's the same game. You're not going to get a Matt Beasler come out of these camps anymore because we're in a different time.
We're in it. Yes. I want you to expand on that because I'm with you. Like, this camp is not going to produce a Matt Besler because at this point in the development of MLS, we know who's good by the time they're 23, 24. You know what I'm saying? They've either been identified through a European scout, or they have, as a younger player, been getting a lot of minutes in MLS because of the academy system. We're not reliant on players to go to the college game, develop for a couple more years, get drafted, develop even more. We can't. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but I just want you to expand a little bit on like why the Matt Besler isn't going to just appear anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know his specific age. I want to say it was probably 25, maybe. But the progression of how it is, like players that are identified as a quality player aren't going to be at the MLS unless they choose to be, or they had injury or something like that that's held them back, for a period of time, this long. Like, I mean, we do see players, but they're already with the team though, right? So you can say, well, what about Miles Robinson? Well, Miles Robinson's been with the team for a while, so he's not breaking into it. He's just there, and I think he's a fine selection for this camp for a number of reasons. But you're not going to pull that, like, you're not like, oh, Brian White, we got it. Like, here we go. I can't believe we never called this guy in, but it's not going to work that way. These players have to take that chance or not take that chance and get that opportunity. Because if he were that good, he would have been called in,
Last
years,
January camp.
right? Or sometime last cycle,
Yeah.
right? And so
a Gold Cup last summer.
right. And so he's not making that impression enough to do that. And so maybe that's a fault of the manager. Gregg has his blinders. He has his players. Like, you see the same Zarnez. I mean, I will say I'm kind of surprised Ferreira wasn't in this camp, but, considering who he did call in. So, like, weird stuff like that. He's almost overplaying his hand with certain players and not others. And so if they're good enough, they're going to be identified earlier enough and either make that move, in their late teens, early 20s to Europe, or they're going to be good enough, like a Miles Robinson, to break into the national team, earlier on, because they've got their eyes on that. Like, it's just not going to. It's going to be rare, I think, to see a 25, 26-year-old player that has never been called into the team get brought in, and not have never heard about him. I just, I think we're past those times.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap up this Camp Cupcake discussion. As you and I talked about last episode, like, there is value in this camp. It's not something that we should do away with. And obviously the real reason this camp happens, and specifically the friendly at the end of the camp happens, is because TV contracts. Let's be real honest. That's why they're, at this point, why they keep having this camp, and why they keep having a televised friendly. But there's value, but it just doesn't seem like we're trying to actually get value from this camp. And that's quite frustrating. Let's take a quick break, and come back and talk about some other things going on in U.S. soccer and immediate future this year. Okay, well, we just talked about a sad Camp Cupcake, but let's look forward to the rest of 2024 for U.S. soccer. You had a tweet today that I really thought was a good discussion kickoff. There will be a FIFA window in June before Copa America. We also know we have Nations League in March. So that's 2 full windows before Copa America. It wouldn't surprise me, and I don't think it would surprise you, if U.S. soccer also has some sort of El Clasico match again this year, which you and I are both in favor of. Those are, that's fine. But the key to your point is, how do you find quality opponents and make these camps, these friendlies, worthwhile? So you can go follow him on Twitter at USKeeper. There will be a FIFA window in June before Copa America kicks off, and makes sense for the USMNT. Both of those matches be against the CONMEBOL teams listed below, playing in Group A and B, right? So you mentioned Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, and Venezuela. I got to be honest. I don't know if Ecuador or Argentina will be the team that we end up playing, but I love that thought. But why specifically are you talking about these CONMEBOL teams from groups A and B?
Well, the way the structure of Copa America is the knockout stage, you're going to be playing in the teams from C and D. I don't think they would want to necessarily schedule friendlies headed into that tournament, so you would likely only see a team from Group A and B in the final. So I think it just makes sense to play these matches headed into the tournament as kind of you know prepare yourself. I mean, in those teams, I think I can see them scheduling one against a so-called lower ranked team because you kind of you probably want to be able to build confidence going into that. So maybe if you can get Argentina, great. You get them in the first one, whatever, make adjustments. I think that would help in that preparation, right? You want to play top tier, and these teams are going to be playing hard, right, in preparation for the tournament. So to play against the best, and look, we don't have a lot of opportunities. It's just the way the FIFA calendars are set up now, and the way these other tournaments and inter confederation tournaments like we have with the Nations League and UEFA has with their Nations League and qualifying for Euros, like there's just not a huge opportunity to play other confederations regularly, and plus World Cup qualifying's already started for some of these confederations.
Yep.
So we really don't have a great opportunity. To see different teams, to play against a better quality opponent, I think you have to absolutely schedule 2 friendlies against one of these 5 teams I mentioned. So yeah, and I said U.S. Soccer's done a pretty good job in those situations, and unless something crazy comes up where they can't, I can't imagine they wouldn't be able to get 2 matches. Whether it's Argentina, who knows? But to me, I would love to see that, but if they can't, they can't. But you've got to get some of the other ones and just get different looks at it. And that's going to make Gregg a better coach if he can figure out how to manage against some of those squads, because they definitely have their own challenges.
Now, if you could pick one that's not Argentina out of Ecuador, Peru, Chile, and Venezuela, who would you want to see?
Just one of the 5, not.
Yeah.
I mean, Ecuador or Peru, I think would be, good, good matchups for the U.S. They're decent quality. Chile has not really been playing great. They're kind of in a mess right now, I think, in general. But yeah, I would say Ecuador or Peru would be probably who I would prefer to see out of that group.
I wouldn't be surprised if we get Venezuela because of the likelihood that we played them in Copa America is super low. You know what I'm saying? So like I could see that, but I'm with you. I would love to see a Peru and Venezuela double like that. I think that would be a really good test. Venezuela is obviously not as strong, but like you do like you said, you want a team that's not as strong as you to like build confidence, but also work on the things that you want to do in a positive way. Whereas, Peru specifically would be a really good test for how do you play against a team that's going to come after you.
All right. I mean, I think I recall we did play Venezuela headed into I think a Gold Cup, and they under Gregg, I believe, and they lost 3-0. It's one of his.
I believe that was 2019. I want to say that we played them in 2019 heading into that Gold Cup, or maybe it was 2021. I'm going back to my schedule now. Yeah, I think it was 2019.
Yeah, 2019. Yep, they played back to they played Jamaica and then they played Venezuela. They lost both.
And
yeah,
that was when we were really considering why we hired this Gregg Berhalter dude.
Well, exactly.
But look, I think Venezuela, even at that point in time, they're on paper, they're not as good of a team as we should be. Granted, I think that June window was a little weird because it wasn't like a full actual senior roster, but regardless, I think we'll end up getting Venezuela. But I think Peru would be really cool. But I'm with you that we need to try to schedule one of these teams. So that is before Copa America, which is nice. We'll have some tune-ups. But before that, we have CONCACAF Nations League. We play Jamaica, and then the winner of the Panama-Mexico match. And we will most likely be doing that without Tyler Adams. Came out this weekend that Bournemouth said he won't be back ready for their first team until March. So I just can't imagine him being fit enough to come back to the U.S. men's national team for Nations League at the end of March either. Are you concerned about that?
I'm not concerned about the Nations League so much, but I'm just concerned in general about Adams. When he, look, when he's healthy and in form, he's great. But the problem is he's had these injuries that are the duration on them are months. I mean, months and months, and that's a concerning to me because I don't know if we have a solution necessarily for replacing him. I think the double pivot is the option that Gregg would probably go with, with a McKinney Musa probably doing that. But you can't, you have to have other options. And so I know Caleb's not a huge fan of Johnny, but Johnny is maybe that option that you'll see be inserted in there, and but that reliability, not having again the World Cup team captain around the team, it's concerning because I think he's a great piece, he's a great leader, but you can't always rely on that. So Gregg may need to make a tough decision if he is playing but not in the best form, right? You have to really say, look, we can't just drag this guy along because he was the captain at the World Cup, right? As much as you might want to be there, we just need the healthiest quality squad in there, and that's what's more concerning me about anything. I mean, I think we can and should win without him in the Nations League, but going forward, what's his reliability and his fitness going to be?
Well, look, Johnny made his debut for Real Betis this past weekend against Barcelona. It was, by all accounts, pretty decent. He looked fine for a guy making his La Liga debut. That's great. Hopefully he can continue to improve because we do need a Tyler Adams backup, and he is the only one we really have right now. I know we had Leonard Maloney in past camps, but it does seem like it makes the most sense to just kind of have Musa and Cardoso be the guys there right now.
Yeah, I think it's important to see it is the problem, right? We haven't really seen that. Cardoso's had some
Jamaica should be a good test for that. They're good enough, but not elite. So, hey, we get to see what Johnny's made of. We get to see what Musa's made of.
But I don't think Gregg's willing to take that chance, though. Like, I mean, Gregg wants to win. In the weirdest way. Like,
I agree, but you have to play one of them.
Oh, you do, and I think, and that's where I just don't. This is where we've seen it with the last several U.S. managers, and I don't follow other international managers as much, but like there's just this like security blanket of certain players in certain positions in certain situations, and there's not that comfort zone isn't due. Because again, I would rather Gregg try something and figure it out in that scenario than to just go with it, and maybe not win or maybe not look the best, but like say, well, we tried it, right? Okay,
yeah.
it didn't work. We figured it out. We made an adjustment, and then we got the win, as opposed to not trying it. Because when is he going to try these things, right?
Yeah.
Copa America's, you're going to try in those friendlies. I don't know. Gregg wants to win at all costs, and we saw it on Saturday. He didn't. He put a team out there he thought was going to win, as opposed to saying, "Look, I don't care if we win or lose. I'm going to put a team out here that's going to try some different things." And and that's where I get frustrated because it's always an excuse.
Well, we saw Musa at this 6, if you will, during the last Nations League, and we won it, and we didn't score or concede a goal. So maybe that is the solution. I've just, in the fall, I think we found that it wasn't as safe as we thought it would be, but maybe it's good enough to beat Jamaica and then either Panama or Mexico. I don't know. Probably. I just would like to see Johnny get a real test, because I think we need to see that, because we can't just rely on Yunus Musa, who's not a 6, to play the 6 well.
Yeah, we have to see that. That's the
Yeah.
biggest problem. We haven't seen it yet. He always has a little nicky injury that holds him out of
Yeah.
international camp, but he can still play for his club. So
Yeah. Well, hopefully Johnny can continue this form in La Liga. He had a really good season in Brasileiro. Obviously got the move. Hopefully he can continue that because regardless of who ends up playing the six or whatever you want to call that position at that time for Nations League, I think the likely pairing or the likely two who play that will be um, Johnny and Musa. We'll just see who ends up playing. Um, Moving on now and switching gears completely, we have the U.S. Women's National Team with a W Gold Cup coming up next month. Um, you and I both mentioned this in our both resolutions plus goals of you need to win this. This isn't a vital tournament to win for a lot of reasons. It came out earlier this month that they would not be having the U.S. women wouldn't have a January training camp. This has also become a kind of a tradition for them over the past couple of years. However, the reality is they'll probably just have a really long training camp leading into the W Gold Cup. But for you, as you look at this, what's your concern right now that we're not going to be able to play our best during this tournament in February?
well, I mean, a lot of these players are off season, so like that's
There's one. Yeah.
right. I think that's a big one, right? And we didn't even mention that with the Gold Cup. I mean, the January camp for the men. That's look, they're off season, right? So they're coming back. They're trying to get fit and form. I think I think it's important that they do that. The roster is going to be kind of critical too, right? Like who they're bringing in and who, what are they asking them to do, right?
Yeah.
So we've got enough continuity, but I mean in the team to I think do that. So if they struggle through the group stage, I think they'll find their
Yeah.
they'll find their stride through when they get to the knockout. And that's pretty typical, I would say, of what we've seen in Gold Cups in general for the teams that have won it. They
Yeah.
kind of they grind their way through the group stage for the most part as they're learning. Then they find that lineup and then they run it. They run the table and they take it home. So I think I would be expecting that in general because of just the lack of playing. I don't know how long the run up is going to be for before they.
Yeah. I think, just going back to this point, a training camp in January when you have a tournament in February is it's going to eat into a lot of these women's off season, and a lot of the players who were going to be in this W Cup were also part of the World Cup, and like just giving them not having to have them come to a training camp in January is fine. So it makes sense that you would have a week or two before the tournament starts for a training camp. The question I'm having, and we hope to get a roster within the next couple weeks, is I don't think Malpew is going to be healthy enough. We saw that Kat Macario is returning to training with Chelsea. I doubt she'll be ready to play, but that would be really cool to see. Um, how many players who kind of had those injuries that were either out for the World Cup or just healthy enough for the World Cup, how many of them are going to be actually able to play in this tournament? Because it's fair to say the U.S. did not have a full selection of players to take to the World Cup last summer.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think there was a lot of players they dragged on there, and we're hoping they would get healthy through the tournament. And that's not a way to play a tournament, right? I would rather say, look, you're just not fit. You're not going
Yeah.
to build, and you're not going to get fit. So let's bring in the next in line type of
Yeah.
situation and type of player that's going to fill the hole because you have to do that, and that's how you expose other players into these situations. I mean, this is a inaugural tournament here. Bring in some of these younger players if they're ready to go. Like I think they're
Yeah.
ready enough, right? Figure it out. You want to win it, you should win it, right? So give
And
them
we
that
saw some
opportunity.
of them in the fall play really well. Jaden Shaw played really well. I thought Sam Coffey played pretty well. I thought Corbin Albert was fine. I thought Mia Fishel showed she can score. So I'm with you. Like we don't have to. Oh, is Alex Morgan fit? Or oh, is Malpew fit? Mal Swanson. Sorry, I keep calling her Pew. Swanson fit. Oh, who's good? We don't have to worry about Julia. She's retired. But we've got young players who showed they can play.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think as much as as fans, and I know my daughter would love to see Alex Morgan there. Maybe maybe this is not the tournament for her. Maybe she needs to have more of a runway to get into, that shape that's needed for, these longer tournaments. I mean, and maybe some of these players will just have to get in fit and be ready for the Olympics. I don't know, but you have to give them a look. And that's what the tournament has to be about. It's got to be blending those newer players into the team.
All right, last topic before we get out of here. Sam Mewis announced that she's retiring from soccer this past week. She won the 2019 World Cup for the U.S. I think it's safe to say that she was a big miss for the team this past summer. It sucks that her injuries kept her from playing and being a healthy person. And so that part that's the sad part of all this.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see a 31-year-old, have to retire because of injury. It's one thing to do it by choice. But someone at that age still has, 3, 4, 5 quality years left, to play and contribute. And it is, yeah, she just never could find it, find that, healthy, formula to keep her out there and keep going with it.
It really is sad to see her have to step away and not on her own terms. But I think it's safe to say she was one of the best midfielders to play for the U.S. And that's saying a lot because they've had some great ones. She even played with some great ones, especially in that 2019 tournament where you had Ertz, Horan, Lavelle, and Mewis all at their best. But she was one of those players too who I admire that she went to Manchester City, tried to play in Europe, and I don't think that I'm not a believer that the women's national team players have to go to Europe, but it does give them just a little bit more of a test to go to a top European team. And it's just a different test than just playing in NWSL their whole career,
Yeah, I think I think the NWSL could flip it if they put a press on that and make that the best league in the world. But
Yeah.
it's gonna, I don't know if they've got the desire to do that. But you're right. You do have to push yourself against some of those other different teams and quality and get that exposure sometimes and go outside your comfort zone. I mean, I think she had 16 goals for Manchester
Yeah.
City. That's is only in like 30 some odd matches. So like to me, that's that's quality, right? I mean, she was able to do that. It's just unfortunately the injuries just she just could not remain healthy for longer stretches.
Well, Sam Mewis, cheers to you and your retirement. Hope you enjoy it and truly get to live it up. I look forward to seeing more of her, though, on Men in Blazers and all the other media that she will do. Thomas, thanks for joining me on this episode of Soccer for Us. Any final thoughts before we head out of here?
No, I'm just excited for the W Gold Cup and then the March window. It's good to have soccer every month, to kind of have international soccer to look forward to on top of the other club stuff that we watch and follow. But it's
meaningful competitions that when we get mad, it makes sense to get mad about, not a friendly in an off-season window in January.
Yeah, I know. I'm passionate about it, but I'm just seeing what it's gonna bring, or potentially bring down the road for the men, and we want it bad, and we don't want to be made to look like a fool. So,
well, again, thank you for joining me. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.